Penguin Books is a British publishing house. It was founded in 1935 by Sir Alan Lane and Alan's brothers, Richard and John, although Alan was the dominant figure in the company. John died in service in 1942 and Richard later sold his share to Alan before the company went public in 1961 as a line of publishers, the Bodley Head, only becoming a separate company the following year. Penguin's success demonstrated that large audiences existed for serious books. Penguin also had a significant impact on public debate in Britain, through its books on politics, the arts, and science. Penguin Books is now an imprint of the worldwide Penguin Random House, an emerging conglomerate which was formed in 2013 by the merger of the two publishers. Formerly, Penguin Group was wholly owned by Pearson plc, the global media company which also owns the Financial Times, but it now retains only a minority holding of 47% of the stock against Random House owner Bertelsmann, who controls the majority stake. It is one of the largest English-language publishers, formerly known as the Big Six, now known as the Big Five. Origins. The first Penguin paperbacks were published in 1935, but at first only as an imprint of the Bodley Head, with the books originally distributed from the crypt of Holy Trinity Church, Marylebone. Only paperback editions were published until the King Penguin series debuted in 1939, and latterly the Pelican History of Art was undertaken. These were unsuitable as paperbacks because of the length and copious illustrations on art paper, so cloth bindings were chosen instead. Penguin Books has its registered office in the city of Westminster, London, England. Anecdotally, Lane recounted how it was his experience with the poor quality of reading material on offer at Exeter train station that inspired him to create cheap, well-designed quality books for the mass market. However, the question of how publishers could reach a larger public had been the subject of a conference at Ripon Hall, Oxford in 1934, at which Lane had been an attendee. Though the publication of literature in paperback was then associated mainly with poor quality, lurid fiction, the Penguin brand owed something to the short-lived Albatross imprint of British and American reprints that briefly traded in 1932. Inexpensive paperbacks did not initially appear viable to Bodley Head, since the deliberately low price of £60 made profitability seem unlikely. This helped Alan Lane purchase publication rights for some works more cheaply than he otherwise might have done, since other publishers were convinced of the short-term prospects of the business. In the face of resistance from the traditional book trade, it was the purchase of 63,000 books by Woolworth that paid for the project outright, confirmed its worth, and allowed Lane to establish Penguin as a separate business in 1936. By March 1936, 10 months after the company's launch on 30 July 1935, 1 million Penguin books had been printed. This early flush of success brought expansion and the appointment of Eunice Frost, first as a secretary, then as editor, and ultimately as a director, who was to have a pivotal influence in shaping the company. It was Frost who in 1945 was entrusted with the reconstruction of Penguin Inc. after the departure of its first managing director Ian Ballantyne. Penguin Inc. had been incorporated in 1939 in order to satisfy U.S. copyright law, and had enjoyed some success under its vice president Kurt Enoch with such titles as What Plane Is That and The New Soldier Handbook, despite being a late entrant into an already well-established paperback market. From the outset, design was essential to the success of the Penguin brand. During the illustrated gaudiness of other paperback publishers, Penguin opted for the simple appearance of 3 horizontal bands, the upper and lower of which were color-coded according to which series the title belonged to. This is sometimes referred to as the horizontal grid. In the central white panel, the author and title were printed in gill sans, and in the upper band was a cartoucher with the legend, Penguin Books. The initial design was created by the then 21-year-old office junior Edward Young, who also drew the first version of the Penguin logo. Series such as Penguin Specials and the Penguin Shakespeare had individual designs. The color schemes included orange and white for general fiction, green and white for crime fiction, cerise and white for travel and adventure, dark blue and white for biographies, yellow and white for miscellaneous, red and white for drama, and the rarer purple and white for essays and belles lettres, and grey and white for world affairs. Lane actively resisted the introduction of cover images for several years. Some recent publications of literature from that time have duplicated the original look. From 1937 and on, the headquarters of Penguin Books was at Harmondsworth west of London, and so it remained until the 1990s, when a merge with Viking involved the head office moving to London. War years. The Second World War saw the company established as a national institution, and though it had no formal role, Penguin was integral to the war effort, thanks in no small part to the publication of such best-selling manuals as Keeping Poultry and Rabbits on Scraps and Aircraft Recognition, and supplying books for the services and POWs. Penguin printed some 600 titles and started 19 new series in the 6 years of the war, in a time of enormous increase in the demand for books. Consequently, Penguin enjoyed a privileged place among its peers. Paper rationing was the besetting problem of publishers during wartime, with the fall of France cutting off supply of esparto grass, one of the constituents of the pulp Penguin used. As such, when rationing was introduced in March 1940, a quota was allocated by the Ministry of Supply to each publisher as a percentage of the amount used by that firm between August 1938 and August 1939. This was particularly advantageous to Penguin, who as a volume printer had enjoyed a very successful year that year. Further, in a deal with the Canadian government, Penguin had agreed to exclusively publish editions for their armed forces, for which they were paid in tons of paper. By January 1942, the Book Production War Economy Agreement regulations came into force, which determined rules on paper quality, type size and margins. Consequently, Penguin eliminated dust jackets, trimmed margins and replaced zone bindings with metal staples. Aside from the noticeable deterioration in the appearance of paperbacks, it became a practical impossibility to publish books of more than 256 pages, resulting in some titles falling out of print for want of material. In addition to their paper allocation, Penguin secured a deal in late 1941, through Bill Williams' connections with ABCA and CEMA, with the War Office, to supply the troops with books through what would be known as the Forces Book Club. Penguin would receive 60 tons a month from Paper Supply in return for 10 titles a month in runs of 75,000 at 5d. Previously, every paperback carried the message, "For the forces, leave this book at a post office when you have read it, so that men and women in the services may enjoy it too," at the bottom of the back cover, inviting the reader to take advantage of the free transmission of books to the forces by the post office. However, demand was exceeding supply on the home front, leading Lane to seek a monopoly on army books made specifically for overseas distribution. This dominance over the paper supply put Penguin in an especially strong position after the war, as rationing continued. Many of its competitors were forced to concede paperback reprint rights to Penguin for this reason, as well as the popular prestige the company enjoyed. Post-war history. See also R.V. Penguin Books Limited. In 1945, Penguin began what would become one of its most important branches, the Penguin Classics, with the translation of Homer's Odyssey by E.V. Rieu. Between 1947 and 1949, the German typographer Jan Tschichold redesigned 500 Penguin books, and left Penguin with a set of influential rules of design principles brought together as the Penguin Composition Rules, a 4-page booklet of typographic instructions for editors and compositors. Chickel's work included the woodcut illustrated covers of the classic series, and with Hans Schmoller, his eventual successor at Penguin, the vertical grid covers that became the standard for Penguin fiction throughout the 1950s. By this time the paperback industry in the UK had begun to grow, and Penguin found itself in competition with then-fledgling Pan Books. Many other series were published, such as The Buildings of England, The Pelican History of Art, and Penguin Education. By 1960, a number of forces were to shape the direction of the company, the publication list and its graphic design. On 20 April 1961, Penguin became a publicly listed company on the London Stock Exchange. Consequently, Alan Lane had a diminished role at the firm, though he was to continue as managing director. New techniques such as phototypesetting and offset lithoprinting were to replace hot metal and letterpress printing, dramatically reducing cost and permitting the printing of images and text on the same paper stock, thus paving the way for the introduction of photography and novel approaches to graphic design on paperback covers. In May 1960, Tony Godwin was appointed as editorial advisor, rapidly rising to chief editor, from which position he sought to broaden the range of Penguin's list and keep up with new developments in graphic design. To this end, he hired Germano Faciti in January 1961, who was to decisively alter the appearance of the Penguin brand. Beginning with the crime series, Faciti canvassed the opinion of a number of designers, including Romek Marber, for a new look to the Penguin cover. It was Marber's suggestion of what came to be called the Marber grid, along with the retention of traditional Penguin color coding, that was to replace the previous three horizontal bars design and set the pattern for the design of the company's paperbacks for the next 20 years. Faciti rolled out the new treatment across the Penguin line, starting with Crime, the Orange Fiction series, then Pelicans, Penguin Modern Classics, Penguin Specials, and Penguin Classics, giving an overall visual unity to the company's list. A somewhat different approach was taken to the Peregrine, Penguin Poets, Penguin Modern Poets, and Penguin Plays series. There were over 100 different series published in total. Just as Lane well judged the public's appetite for paperbacks in the 1930s, his decision to publish Lady Chatterley's Lover by D. H. Lawrence, Indiana 1960 boosted Penguin's notoriety. The novel was at the time unpublished in the United Kingdom, and the predicted obscenity trial not only marked Penguin as a fearless publisher, it also helped drive the sale of at least 3.5 million copies. Penguin's victory in the case heralded the end to the censorship of books in the UK, although censorship of the written word was only finally defeated after the Inside Linda Lovelace trial of 1978. Pearson takeover. By the end of the 1960s, Penguin was in financial trouble, and several proposals were made for a new operating structure. These included ownership by a consortium of universities, or joint ownership by the Cambridge University Press and Oxford University Press, but none of them came to anything. Sir Alan Lane died on 7 July, and 6 weeks later, Penguin was acquired by Pearson plc on 21 August 1970. A new emphasis on profitability emerged, and, with the departure of Faciti in 1972, the defining era of Penguin book design came to an end. Later changes included the disappearance of Halmansworth as the place of publication. This was replaced by a London office address. From 1937, the headquarters of Penguin Books was at Halmansworth, west of London, and so it remained until the 1990s, when a merger with Viking involved the head office moving into London. Penguin published Deborah Lipstadt's book Denying the Holocaust, which accused David Irving of Holocaust denial. Irving sued Lipstadt and Penguin for libel in 1998, but lost in a much-publicized court case. Other titles published by Penguin which gained media attention and controversy include Massacre by Cine, Spycatcher, which was suppressed in the UK by the government for a time, and The Satanic Verses. leading to its author Salman Rushdie having to go into hiding for some years after Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran issued a fatwa, an edict amounting to a sentence of death against him. In 2006, Penguin attempted to involve the public in collaboratively writing a novel on a wiki platform. They named this project A Million Penguins. On 7 March 2007, the Penguin Books UK blog announced that the project had come to an end. In 2014, the Penguin Hotline was created by Madeline McIntosh.